Coming at you live from TRP bunker. It's the 5th. Oh, no, it's not the 5th. Oh, my gosh. It's the 8th of November, 2024. This is the first broadcast of the Republican professor since the election of 2024. Of course, the results have not been certified. They're not official. So, I was just backing up today a video. I can't download it from my LJM Facebook page, which is has the tagline "Make California Great Again." Thanks to Aaron Nabaum, my buddy, for doing the artwork on that. He did that pro bono. I don't have much of an update from that Facebook page, just to say that I've gotten some criticism about the tagline "Make California Great Again." Over the last 4 years, I've gotten some criticism for that. And I don't understand the criticism. Similar to, I don't understand the criticism of the red hat that said "Make America Great Again." I don't particularly find the hat attractive. I have one, but I don't really wear it. I think I've worn it once. But I just think that it's interesting, this fixation on this phrase, making something great, as if it's a bad thing. And to me, it seems like these are people generally who don't speak out at all against making it worse. Is it just me? But things have gotten dramatically worse in California. Dramatically worse. The higher education system has gotten dramatically worse under Democrat rule. And the fixation, the anger, the hatred, let's call it what it is, the demonic screeching against a phrase, "make something great again," is interesting, concerning. And I noticed that there's a little bit less of that since Tuesday. But anyway, I'm backing up the page there. I've paused it. I'm backing up the video that Curtis and I did on the 22nd of January 2021, which was 2 days after Biden was inaugurated. What I find interesting about that historical piece, and that's why I'm backing it up, because it's an archive of the development of TRP and our country, I think. It's an interesting snapshot into that day, 22 January 2021. You know what we were talking about? We were talking about Q, and I said what I thought Q was. And we were talking about whether there was, how to interpret certain things Mitch McConnell was doing, and stuff that Pence was doing, and basically the infighting that Republicans had in that sad and confusing time. And I was right about all of it. And I predicted that it was going to help Trump in 2024 because Democrats were overreacting to, for example, January 6th. They were overreacting. They were showing some things that I don't think they realized they were showing at the time, which was a deep insecurity about their hold and their advance toward absolute power. What they thought would be absolute power. Most certainly they thought that. just the fact that they had all those National Guard people in January there. Supposedly the guy got 81 million votes. And people are looking at those numbers again now, and I think a lot of Democrats are wondering whether that was real. You can't make this up. But anyway, I predicted it was going to help Trump again. In fact, I was telling people who wanted to get rid of Trump, I said, if you want to get rid of Trump, you should vote for him. You should vote for him in 2020. He can't run again. And I said this this time around too. If you really want to get rid of Trump, vote for him. And because he will come back again a third time, a fourth time. He's got so much energy. Well, this is working out better than I expected. And it's because some things happened between January 22nd, which is what this is. I'm updating that. It'll drop today. Either today or tomorrow. But it's working out better, mainly because there was some triangulation, which was brilliant. It's exactly what I said should happen. It was triangulation to do the politics of addition rather than subtraction. And the politics of addition always carries the threat of impurity, of adulteration, of watering down something. And I think the risk of that is lower than normal, because the nature of the triangulation, what I mean by triangulation is, you got Elon Musk, who by his own words said he was on the left 3 years ago. Listening carefully to what he has to say, the only thing I'm concerned about with him is the electric vehicle stuff. He's, of course, founder of Tesla guy, right? So you can't blame him for being so vehement about electric vehicles, and I don't. But I listened very carefully to what he had to say, and I don't think he's for the mandates. I'm not sure what he thinks about tax incentives for electric vehicles. I don't think that that's a good idea. But I don't think that our electrical grid can handle it, and I don't think it's, to me, electric vehicles creep me out. That's the only thing that I really don't, that's really concerning to me about Elon so far. I think he's right on some really big key things, namely censorship. And if you listen to what he says about the Second Amendment, he's right on the First and Second Amendments. And if somebody's right about the First and Second Amendments, they're pretty solid. So he's also right about the transgender stuff. And so those are three things. Those are three boxes that if you check all those boxes, that's a pretty good sign. He's also for deregulation. That's a pretty good sign too. On Bobby Kennedy, we were all over that on TRP podcast a year and a half ago, 2023. That was on my radar. And do you want to hear a brief story about what that was? Well, I wrote about it. I don't know how many people are reading what I write, but I wrote that I started following some accounts on Instagram a number of years ago of women whose children or themselves had been vaccine injured. And I don't remember how I came across the first one, but once I came across one, they all follow each other, and I started just kind of following. I didn't even pick all of them. I couldn't handle the deluge of information I was getting. But what I noticed was there were a host of very tight-knit women who, oh yeah, thanks, Amy. This is going on the podcast. So I'm just FYI, everybody that's audio only, I'm seeing comments sometimes because I'm on Facebook Live. So just putting that out there. We have a comment, love the picture behind you. That was in my grandpa's cabin. And that was given to me by my uncle Jimmy. My grandpa gave it to him. That was in Grand Lake, and now it's in TRP bunker. Sorry, it's such a mess. I don't. It's a work in progress. It's a lot better than it used to be. These are all court decisions that I read. I print them out and I read them from start to finish. And that's a union mailer from 2008. Some of these mailers I keep because they're ephemera, and this one is telling us to change the English language on marriage, the word marriage. That same issue came up this fall. So you think that this is irrelevant because it's just for 2008. Nope. 2024, that same issue came up. And so I'm going to put those mailers together. It doesn't really take up that much room. In the end, it helps you stay sane and know what you're fighting for politically and culturally. But anyway, what was I saying? I was saying about this video that back in January 2021, January 22nd. I'm gonna post that as an episode. I was calling it right. See, that's why I do this. You got to keep track of this because 4 years ago, I remember feeling very uncomfortable having that conversation, and I remember feeling uncertain. Uncertain doesn't mean you're not right or that you don't have belief. I was cautious, but it turns out I was right that this overreach was going to help Trump in 2024 and that he was not going to give up. I believed that then, and I was right. It's not just Trump, though. See, he can't do anything by himself. He needs a Republican Senate. I was saying that. You need to have a Republican Senate. If he would have been reelected in 2020 without a Republican Senate, guys, I'm telling you, this is extremely vulnerable. The magic of the moment here, the Republican moment, is that if you can get the right people in running the government, and you need a Republican Senate for that, that's when change starts happening. Okay? So I just praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. We were given a tender mercy this week. And don't put too much on your shoulder. Hope we don't screw it up. We will. Of course we will. Do you know why I know we'll screw it up? Just read the Old Testament, for God's sake. It's going to happen. There's going to be screw-ups. This is what I want you to pay attention to. The screw-ups don't mean what you think they mean. You need to drop this perfectionist attitude that you have. And this drives me nuts. These people, you got to start thinking politically. Politics is not a bad thing. It's just a part of life. You know, it's just a part of life, guys. You think that this is a special thing for me? It's special. This is my life. This is just my life. Okay, so I'm telling you, it doesn't have to be your entire life, but I'm just saying it's part of life. You just have to look at it as something you have to do. Okay? Just like a country has to have a military, it's just something you got to do. Some people have to go fight sometimes. And you, who don't fight in war, you have to be involved in the process. Is it messy? Of course it's messy. Stop being a poopy pants about it. Of course it's messy. Is it imperfect? Of course it's imperfect. But the way people these perfectionistic people, that don't like the word Republican. Oh, it's Republican. I'm a conservative. Really, you're a conservative? Is that right? Really? And you think conservative is more pure than Republican? Really? So you're saying that conservatives have never done anything bad or embarrassing in history? Give me a break. Get off your high horse. You can't even define the term. What are you conserving? Let me ask you this. Was slavery abolished by conservatives? I'll wait. No, it was abolished by Republicans. You need to rethink your little labels you're attached to with your little heart. However that story came. I don't know how you got the tattoos that you have. But, some people don't like the word Christian. They say follower of Jesus. Are you telling me that followers of Jesus, everybody who fits that category was goody-goody two-shoes and, my crap don't stink? There's some pretty naughty people in that category too. Well, why aren't you afraid of that label? Every single label that you like comes with a ton of baggage. Every single one. And I'm telling you, the word Republican comes with less baggage. It comes with less baggage, or just as much. So get off your high horse and quit acting like you're some pure person aside from politics. I'm sick of the speeches of, I don't want to tell you who I voted for. It's just like, just quit being a poopy pants, okay? There's a lot at stake here, and you gotta get up to speed on how things work. Part of it is I'm just hanging out right now. It's Friday, the week of the election, and I don't want you to misinterpret the election. Okay, don't misinterpret it. Okay. You shouldn't get too excited, and you shouldn't get low either. You should be in the middle. You should stay in the middle all the time as far as excitement goes. I'm not saying go out, don't celebrate. Celebrate, okay? But realize this is a lifestyle. It's not an event. It's not the Super Bowl, and then it's over, and then you go. That's not what's going on here. You're a participant. You're not a spectator. You are a participant. Okay? So you can help. You're not on the sidelines just as, commentator. That's not what's happening here. You are a participant in this whole thing. Part of what you got to do to participate is you got to level up on some basic understanding of American politics, and you don't want to do that, and you're going to be a sourpuss, and you're going to say, I don't want to do that. Well, you're going to have to. I'm sorry. Because it's not just other people that make this work. It's you that makes it work as well. So before we go out there and criticize too much, when the mistakes happen, when the scandals happen, because they will, what are you doing to keep this thing going? Are you moving the ball down the road in your own personal understanding of things and your personal involvement of things? I can't tell you how sick to my stomach I am of Republican men, I'm just going to say it, Republican men in California who they don't use the word Republican of themselves. They say they're conservative. I'm going to barf already. And two, yes, I did say A first. And two, when I say to a Republican man that I'm hanging out with who has a nice house and plenty of money and sits around bloviating and talking about his own theories and has done squat to organize people to effective political action and cultural engagement, and I say the stereotype is of political engagement of Republican men is you sit around and bloviate, and that's what you think is activism, and they don't get it. They don't. It's like they don't know I'm talking about them while they're bloviating. I'm so sick of that. I'm so sick of it. If you think you can make a change, try to make a change. Do something. And you're not going to do much if you're scared of the word Republican. I mean, that's kind of like if you're scared of the term "make something great." I mean, you got to get over some basic things here. I mean, these are basic things. Okay, now as far as the election goes, let's just do a minor history lesson. Okay? We don't have to do the whole history. I'm just remember when there was a senator that ran for president in 1964. His name was Barry Goldwater. And he lost that election so bad. It was, I mean, a lot of people were like, I'm so embarrassed. The conservatives took over the Republican Party. Oh, I'm so embarrassed. And they were so embarrassed to be Republican after Gold. But there was a group of people that were not embarrassed. One of them was named Ronald Reagan, by the way. One was named Phyllis Schlafly, Young Americans for Freedom, who owned the Reagan Ranch now. Those guys were not embarrassed. They went to work. And next thing you know, Reagan is being elected governor in 1966, just 2 years later, of California, man. That was a big deal. That was a big deal. Richard Nixon, the sitting vice president during the 50s, he couldn't even win in 62. And I know Reagan didn't do as near as well as he could have as governor of California. I know that. I know. He was learning. He didn't know anything. He was learning on the job. By the way, thank God he learned on the job in California so he didn't screw it up when he was president, because he did a lot better job as president because he had been governor. Well, okay, who won in 64? LBJ won. I mean, he won a landslide in 64. What was the long-term effect of that? Well, he got some legislation passed that really screwed us up big time. But how popular was he in 68? He was so embarrassed he couldn't even run again in 68. And Richard Nixon won. Well, we brought up Richard Nixon. Let's think about Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon in 72 won one of the biggest landslides in American history. It's jaw-dropping. I think it's like number 3 in history. It's number 2 or 3. It's way up there. How did he do? He couldn't even finish his term. 2 years later, he was resigning. Reagan won in 80, and thank God. Thank God. Thank God. But he was immediately hit with a recession. He was shot. There was some serious hurdles. He was dealing with a Congress that the House of Representatives had been under Democrat control for decades. That's what he was dealing with, to try to get taxes lower. Yes, he had the Senate, but there's a lot of people in there that didn't know what they were doing. And in 84, he won a landslide. And praise God. Praise God. Reagan had some real doozies as far as some of the people he appointed to the Supreme Court. Sandra Day O'Connor. Man, in terms of abortion, what a disaster she was. Planned Parenthood versus Casey. That upheld Roe. No one can figure out what the hell that case even means. That ditched Roe's reasoning. By the way, Roe was put in place by Richard Nixon appointees. That was a disaster. Won a landslide. He won a landslide. It was a disaster, though, in terms of Roe versus Wade. Planned Parenthood versus Casey. And I love these guys in other respects. Nixon also put Rehnquist in there, and he ended up being a pretty decent Chief Justice. Reagan appointed him to Chief Justice. Reagan gets a lot of credit. And I say thank God, thank God. It's always a mixed bag, is what I'm trying to tell you. It's always a mixed bag. Okay? So don't get too excited. But also don't do this either. Just be in the middle. Do your job. Show up. Speak loudly and boldly and clearly and persuasively in public for what you believe. And if you don't know how to do that, get trained. It's always a mixed bag. Always. Just expect that, and you won't be so disappointed all the time. And you won't be so disengaged when you need to be engaged. Okay? God is at work. And this is a tender mercy. Did God give Israel tender mercies in the Old Testament?
Why are you bringing up the Old Testament? Why are you bringing it? Yeah.
Well, because we're talking about God, and God gave us the Old Testament to talk about. It would make natural sense for us to talk about that. Solomon, in all of his glory. Remember Solomon? Why? He's wise, right? Really wise, yeah. Well, how'd that work out? It ended in disaster. Overtaxing people to pay for his huge buildings, which he didn't really need to do. He didn't need to do all that. Solomon didn't realize that maybe less is more and it's more sustainable. Sometimes less is more. I think Trump's legacy and the Republican Party, properly understood, should be going for less is more and sustainability. We want sustainability. For example, the government is way too big. It does way too much. Less is more. The taxes are too high. Less is more. We don't do near enough on what would be really sustainable in education. And education is a perfect example of how less is more. And I think less great inflation is more. More education. Less devices in the classroom is more education. We got to go back to what proved well in the past. So what I'm saying is just continue praying, showing up, speaking articulately, defending what you believe in public well. If you don't know how to do that, you got to level up and you got to learn. You got to keep making progress. Don't get too crazy. Don't get too excited. And don't go low. Stay in the middle. And expect there to be problems. Just expect it. When it happens, don't freak out. Don't do this crazy stuff where you go, oh my gosh, we always screw up, blah, blah, blah. Look back at the past. Look at Nixon. He won a landslide in 72. You better remember that. He resigned in 74. LBJ, landslide in 1964. So embarrassed he couldn't even run again in 68. And it was really bad for his party. He left us behind a disaster, by the way. I don't entirely blame him. I think I blame the electorate. You got to remember, the electorate, what people want is very fickle. People are extremely fickle. The American people are fickle. And how do I know that? Because I know students, and students are extremely fickle. Students love a funny professor. They love stand-up comedy during class. And then when you get sick of doing stand-up comedy and you go, I think I'm a professor. I think I want to start teaching now. I want my legacy to be not that you were laughing, but that you learn. They don't like that as much. Yeah. They're fickle. And that's how the American people are. They're fickle. They change their mind. They don't know their butt from their elbow. And this coalition that has elected Trump is fickle. Okay? You got people playing nice that don't normally play nice together. And they just happen to work out. Oh, you know what I was saying about these these Instagram pages, these ladies that I follow, the vaccine injured man. I'm telling you, it's a real thing, and I was right. I've been following these people for years, and it turns out I was right. And Trump, I don't know how this happened. He folded them with Bobby Kennedy, the MAHA movement. Incidentally, you should call Democrats MAWA. MAWA Democrats. Make America worse again. Democrats. MAWA. They're MAWA people. They say the word MAGA as a really bad thing. Well, it's MAWA versus MAGA. Choose your poison here. I don't want to make things worse. So what side are you on again? Anyway, it's a stupid debate, and it's stupid how crazy they were about the hat on that kid. Remember with the Indian banging the drum? The hatred. You guys are probably better on dealing with hatred effectively. I'm not sure how effective I am with that. There's so much hatred out there in the college campuses, and it's spilled out into corporate boardrooms and HR. That's the real threat to our economy, is the HR, the woke HRs. We got to figure a way to save that, save people's jobs so they don't feel like they're hiding when they get a job. It's really bad. And I can't talk about certain things I know that I'm dealing with right now, just in terms of just trying to get income here in California. It's really bad. I mean, there is a witch hunt for people who speak truth. So I'll just make this pitch out to you. The Republican professor could use your support financially. I'm on Venmo at the Republican professor. Buy me a coffee, Lucas J. Mather. We could use your support. Always, we could use your prayers as well, and your encouragement. Your encouragement goes so far. Oh my goodness. And this is what I'm going to summarize this little episode here as. It's a good week. You should be happy. Don't let anything steal your happiness. This is a great week. The Lord has given us a tender mercy. Our response should be an overwhelming gratefulness and thankfulness. because we do not deserve it. It is a gracious mercy to us. And so I am happy. I can't tell you how relieved I am. I was having such a burden for the last 4 years. And this burden was, I think, culminated in the death of John W. Boswell, and we memorialized him on this podcast. John was one of the inspirations for the Republican Professor podcast and just everything we were doing here. You would have loved him. He was not a Christian. He took his own life. He was an awesome man. I talked about it on the podcast. I don't think I'm going to re-talk about it, but just to let you know, remind you that there's 4 episodes on the Republican Professor podcast that handle his writing while he was still alive, and his writing was in response to Biden getting elected, and I think he was right about most of what he was saying there. He was saying in different ways what Elon Musk said to Joe Rogan the day before the election. Did you guys see that? Elon had a very quick summary of the essence and the spirit of what John was saying for years. Elon said it the day before the election on Joe Rogan. This past Monday. I mean, dude, it was this past Monday. I mean, I saw it Monday night. I would not doubt that that was a key part of what happened this week. What Elon said. He summarized it, and it's at the hour and 10-minute mark-ish. Hour, 10-minute mark. Joe Rogan, Elon Musk, this past Monday, November 4th, 2024. If you don't watch that whole thing, I don't blame you. They're talking about video games and squirrels and stuff like that. I think it's an hour and 10 minutes or so. Something around there. And it's 5-10 minutes. That's key right there. Well, John was saying that in writing years before in much greater detail. And what you need to take away from that is that Republicans don't think the same way as Democrats do. Democrats are constantly I'm talking about the crazy Democrats, okay? The ones that control college campuses, which I'm an expert in because I was there for 20 years, okay? 12 campuses, I saw it firsthand. Democrats constantly think about ways to solidify their control over geographic areas for the foreseeable future. And it's not just campus Democrats either. It's slaveholding Democrats before the Civil War. What do you think the Civil War was about? It was about going to great lengths to preserve their absolute control over human beings. Once the Civil War ended in defeat for the Democrats, well, they see, this is how little Republicans think like Democrats. What mistake did the Republicans make in 1865?
Didn't the party switch? I think the party switched. That was then, and this is now. And
well, yeah, that was then, and this is now. That nothing really follows from just the fact that it was a different point of time. I mean, 2 seconds ago was then, and this is now too. It doesn't mean that it's untrue, what I'm saying. The parties did not switch. That's a lie. That's a lie. Democrats who want to preserve power, they tell that lie because it helps them preserve power because they're embarrassed about their past. Okay. But the problem that the mistake that Republicans made is they were naive. They were naive. They did not protect the president. It's pretty basic. They misunderestimated, to quote George W. Bush, the desperation that Democrats had to control human beings. And the president was shot and was killed. And it would not have been that hard to protect him. You're in the middle of fighting a frickin' war for 4 years. Hello? Yeah. That was an extremely costly mistake. I'm not saying it was a mistake for Republicans. That's not how I talk. It was a mistake for America. It was a mistake that cost America dearly because a Democrat vice president took control immediately. And what happened? Reversed all sorts of positive gains from Republicans. And the cost was incredible and horrific. I'm talking about murders in the hundreds in the thousands. Rapes probably in the hundreds of thousands. Maimings, terrorism, and Democrats eventually figured out how to regroup and take control, total control, of an entire region for decades, almost a century. Because Republicans were not as crazy as they were in terms of how to control things and have power. What I'm trying to point out to you is that this is a time where you really want to reflect on these things and don't dismiss them. They're in our history for a reason. Do you think that God gave us the Old Testament so that it could just be a nice little ornament on the bookshelf, and you're not supposed to, read it actually? You're just supposed to look at it and say, "Oh, that's nice. That's our it's history. It's poetry, whatever you want to say." No. It's there for you to learn for today, so you don't repeat the same crap. Now, the same crap will be repeated because we're humans and we're flawed, and to some extent, that's going to happen, and you need to chill out. But a lot of it doesn't have to be repeated. Why else would it be there for us? And it's there in our history. What happened to the South in the 1800s? And you know what people, they'll say, "Oh, the Republicans had a Southern strategy." In a Southern strategy. Thank God. Republicans had a Southern strategy. Black people can now buy an AR-15 in the South and defend themselves from Democrat violence. Wow, what a concept. Praise God. Yeah, the Democrats had a Southern strategy too. It was called slavery. It was called segregation. It was called terrorism. It was called the Ku Klux Klan. And all the other groups. You want a book on this? Oxford University Press. Gelzo. Get Professor Gelzo's book on Reconstruction. Oxford University Press. He teaches at Princeton. Perhaps you've heard of it. I've met him in person. I asked him to come on the podcast. He said, sure, I'll come on. I never reached out to him. Why? Because the support I was getting from the podcast dried up. I didn't have the resources. But I'll tell you, that's a great book on Reconstruction. He details all this stuff. And by the way, he doesn't say it's conservatives versus liberals or whatever. He doesn't use that language. It's Republicans versus Democrats. And you need to take that seriously because there is a spirit in each of these parties. I'm not saying Republicans are perfect. They're not. We're people. Am I saying that Israel was read the Old Testament for God's sake. I'm not saying that there's a perfect party. I just said that Solomon's reign ended in disaster from overtaxation. Okay, you got to ditch the perfectionism. Just ditch it. This is real life here. Okay? It's real life. You should have learned that when you were a kid. I don't know how you misread. You didn't learn that, but you should learn this is real life. And none of us is perfect. There is no one righteous, no, not one. Jesus has somebody come up to him in the gospel and say, good teacher. And he says, hold up. Why do you call me good? No one is good except God. Okay? The term Republican versus Democrat is actually mapping something in reality. It's something in the world you need to pay attention to. These are phenomena you need to pay attention to. The Democrats controlled an entire region for decades. And that's what they wanted to do to the entire country. And this election, Elon Musk was correct, stopped that, at least for now. But if you forget, it won't be just for now. Left-wingers make a religion out of absolute, total control over people. There are no second parties in North Korea. For decades. No other parties in the Soviet Union for decades. Need I go on? Cuba, Venezuela. Talk to people from these places. Look up Lily Tong. What's her last name? Williams? New Hampshire, Congresswoman, candidate. She lost. Look her up. Look at her speeches. Look at her debates. She has a thick Chinese accent. She knows what she's talking about. She's seen it firsthand. And I've seen it because I've been reading it since I was a kid about communism and the left wing. When you hear communism, think socialism and National Socialism too. We covered this on the podcast. Both types of socialism were on the left. Socialism is a left-wing thing. The Nazis were socialists. Okay, we covered this ad nauseum on the podcast. Okay, Helmut Thielicke. You got to pay attention. It's just part of life. It's just what you got to do. It's like sweeping the floor. It's something you got to do. You got to pay attention. You got to level up. You got to learn how to stand up for what you believe in public. And you have to be teaching this stuff to the younger generation. That's what we're here for. So, it's a great week. It's just as great of a week as Nixon in 1972. Remember that. Okay? Get excited, but not too excited. Do your job. It's a great week, just like 1984 was for President Reagan. He had Iran-Contra 2 years later. There's always going to be scandals, people. You can predict them. There's going to be fighting. Pray. Pray for these guys. Pray for Elon. Pray for Joe. Pray for Bobby. Pray for Tucker. Pray for this new lady that's been named the Chief of Staff, White House Chief of Staff. Man, she's going to need prayer. What's her name? The lady that was named White House Chief of Staff. That's a key position. She's going to be running the federal government. Pray for these people. Pray for JD. Pray for Donald. Pray for every congressman and woman. Pray for senators. Pray for these local legislators. People are coming up, city council. And just get involved. Okay? Get involved. The Republic is worth it. The blessings that the United States has bequeathed to hundreds of millions of people is hard to overstate. And I don't know how you can deny that it's God's tender mercy, not only on our nation, but on our world. And may we live up to it. Lord, help us. Lord, help us live up to this. Thank you for the work you've done. Help us live up to it. I'm going to leave you there. I've enjoyed this time with you.